Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, October 16th, 2014. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Homebrewer James Sites shares something new, at least to us, an experimental wine and sour beer hybrid experiment. Steve Wilkes will help me evaluate it. If you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. You can find me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. We also have a Basic Brewing Radio and Basic Brewing Video page on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing. We're on the Google Plus, too. And thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. You know how that works. Whenever you think of Amazon shopping, go to our website first and click on our Amazon ad on the right-hand side of the page. It won't cost you any extra, but you'll be helping us to bring you the show, and we greatly appreciate your support there. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site as well. You can find our Basic Brewing iPhone app on iTunes, our Android app on Amazon.com. We have a Windows Phone app. We're in the BlackBerry podcast directory, and we're in the Stitcher app as well. Check out our Brewer's Logbook at basicbrewingshop.com. In the front is a blank calendar that you can use to track your fermentations and plan your brews, and there's room in the back to log the details of up to 50 batches of beer. If you want to put a tip in our tip jar, some coinage in our guitar case, you can go to basicbrewing.com/support. Thanks to everybody who has done so already. Protect your precious beer with one of our growler bags. Check those out at basicbrewingshop.com. And for a limited time, you can get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener with the purchase of any of our DVD combos. Quite the deal. And the bottle opener, if you haven't seen it, is something really cool. Go to our website, go to our shop, and take a look at that. There's a link to a demo video on the site. If you'll remember last week, Joe from Kansas City, who, by the way, must be happy about the Royals' performance in the postseason, Joe wrote a letter saying that he wasn't a big fan of brewing competitions, saying they were too subjective and basically too inconsistent. And I asked for your input on the matter, and that drew this response from Charlie from Detroit. Charlie says competitions are subjective, but so is beer. If competitions focused solely on objective measures, we would all improve at hitting specific metrics, but we may take our eye off, leaving the taster with an overall impression of a delicious and balanced beer. Competitions provide a brewer feedback from individuals who have some measure of expertise. They aren't your brother, spouse, or lifelong friend. They neither heap praise nor are they excessively critical, but they are polite. They don't care about your feelings. Sure, judges have bad days, and feedback can vary widely, but it would be silly to take a single piece of feedback as gospel. Charlie says, I sent an ordinary bitter recently to a few competitions and received scores of 36.5, 35.5, 29, and 25.5. While that spread is large, there were one or two common threads across all four score sheets. I retasted the beer with the common comments in mind and was able to pick up something that I did not notice before, and I'll alter my process because of it. For insight like that, I think competitions are great. And Charlie says, in the end, I do this for fun. It's my hobby. Competitions should be an exciting way to gather unbiased comments. Any other motives sound suspiciously like work to me. Well, thanks, Charlie. Well put. Nice to hear from the other side of the fence. On another topic, Mason from Cleveland wrote after hearing my conversation with Chris Colby of beerandwinejournal.com on carbonation. Mason says, I just listened to the last podcast on Sunday and wanted to tell you how I carbonate in a keg. I love English brewing styles, and so I try to keep that flavor going. I put a half a cup of brown sugar in a cup of water to sanitize the mix. I pour it into my keg and rack on top of the sugar, and then I just seal the keg. I don't use any other CO2 to seal the keg. I wait about 2 weeks and then hook up a tap. I try to do a test pull to see how it pours. If it comes out too strong, I will vent some of the pressure and keep going. The CO2 from the sugar adds enough pressure to the keg to push the beer out without having to add a tank or line. If I'm pouring for a party, I can clear half the keg before I have to add CO2. There you go. Appreciate that mention. Essentially, bottle conditioning in the keg. Jeff from Kingston, Washington has this tip. Hey, James, just listened to last week's podcast and had a chuckle about the PET bottle explosion. We used to do that for fun when I was a kid using vinegar and baking soda. However, that's not the reason for the email. I was going to mention a method that I use to keep myself from having to clean up a mess when I bottle condition. I place all of my bottles in a big Rubbermaid tub with a lid while they are conditioning. If something explodes, the tub takes the hit, and all the beer stays well contained. No mess and much less dangerous. Very nice, Jeff. Appreciate that. I use a plastic tub myself without a lid, and I put my fermenter in if I'm afraid there's going to be the potential of any fermenting beer getting a little too happy and coming out of the top. And that sure beats mopping the floor. Okay, let's get on to the meat of the matter. Part of what I like doing about this show is getting to try the results of experiments, of course. And often that involves tasting something that I wouldn't have thought to do myself. And then that sparks something in my mind that leads to adding another tool or ingredient or technique such as that into my brewing setup. Well, this week's show is one of those out-of-the-box experiments that sparked some inspiration in my mind. Homebrewer James Sites has experimented with combining sour beer with wine, and he shared the result. Well, James Sites, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thank you for having me, James. Really appreciate it.
You have introduced Steve Wilkes and me to something that we hadn't been exposed to before, and that as we say in our little sound clip later on, is getting harder and harder to do. So congratulations.
You're welcome.
Before we get into the details, give us some background about yourself as a brewer.
Well, I started brewing in about 2005, January 2005. Doing extract beers. I made some good beers. Didn't really have a direction, I think the difficult thing was then that you just went big early. One of my early, I guess, brewing idols was Sam Calagione and at Dogfish Head, and they did big beers, but everyone was doing them. So I wanted to do something a little bit different. And the first thing I really started playing around with were braggots and honey beers. I haven't done any meads, but done a lot of work with honey, and that was fun up until a point. But I guess about 8 years ago or so, I started to dip my toes into brewing sour beers.
Hopefully not literally.
I'm sure you could ferment some things with what's on the toes, but no, I'm not going to do that. I know someone did something with yeast in someone's beard, and I'm not planning on trying that anytime soon. But my first couple sour beers were, we'll just say, horrible. There just was not a lot of information out there on what was proven, tried and true ways to do something like this. So through trial and error, I started to sort of get on my feet, and I'd say for the past probably about 4 or 5 years, I think I've been brewing some pretty good sour stuff, and a lot of it.
So this is before the Tonsmeyer book came out.
Exactly. I've followed Mike, and we've met on a couple occasions. He's a fantastic guy. Love to follow his blog. He's got great beer experiments across the board, not just sour stuff, but he's definitely, we'll say, renowned for what he does on the sour side of things. But he was one of the first people that I've ever seen that really gave a lot of thought and process to the whole sour beer brewing thing. Before it was just kind of, magic.
What you sent us was sour beer wine hybrids. So when did the wine start sneaking into the picture?
It was let's see. It's probably a while back when there started to become the beers like Deuce and Malheur, and the big how would I call it? Champagne like beers that were out there that sort of inspired me. So I brewed a beer, a huge beer, big barley wine with honey and grape juice. And it just didn't turn out exactly like I wanted it to. Still definitely a good beer, but it was missing something. Tried it again a couple years later with Brett C. Similar recipe, but a little bit later on the malt. Still kind of was missing something. And then through reading, some of the experiments that Mike had done on the Mad Fermentationist and kind of brainstorming myself, I said, well, why don't I do a sour beer and, make half of it with a wine yeast and, kind of see what happens going from there. So I did 2 projects. Both of them are ones that you guys, got to taste. But, I think they came out unique, we'll say. Definitely something different that hadn't been brought to the table before. And, from my perspective, just using a thought process that I can build on myself as far as brewing goes.
Yeah, and Steve and I recorded a tasting of the white and the red. A little bit later on, we'll play for you. But let's talk about the brewing process. What was your strategy, or what was your thinking in framing this whole thing?
Well, what I wanted to do was very much feature the wine aspect of it. Had a lot of beers in the past that had grape juice in it, but the grape juice almost sort of like second fiddle or a second thought. I mean, the 2 that really come to mind, and I think they're good beers in and of themselves, were Allagash, Victor, and Victoria. They were white and red grape beers, but I definitely got more beer than I got grape. And I'd done a lot of reading as far as not only wine making, but the whole wine world goes, and their, we'll say, theories and their thought processes when they go into making wine. And I thought, I want to incorporate that into making a beer. And I thought the best platform for that would be, a sour beer. I thought that would be, fantastic. It's already compared to wine anyway, sort of the wine or the champagne of the beer world. So that's where my, we'll say, jumping off point was. And then it just sort of took off from there with, we'll say, appropriate secondary flavors, like adding different fruits and what have you. I mean, I didn't get a chance to send those varietals out to you guys, but the base beer was made in both of those cases, so it could serve as a foundation for something else.
So let's talk about the way these were constructed.
Mm-hmm.
You had to basically sort of 2 parallel components going on. So let's talk about the beer side first. How did you structure that recipe?
What I wanted to do was, as I said, give the wine as much voice as possible. So I figured, especially for something as delicate as, a white wine, I still wanted to have some beer component in there. I mean, I think the difficulty of it was that maybe there's a little bit of a stretch in finding it. I thought, how can I make the lightest, but, a more characterful base beer? So I went with Pils malt and rice. And I thought that really fit the recipe well. I mean, in both of these beers, I guess if you can call them that, in both of these beers, there's no hops used at all. As a home brewer, you kind of have the license to be able to do things like that, as opposed in the commercial realm. But then on the red wine, the red grape side of things, and I wanted to punch it up a little bit because those red grapes would definitely have a more acidic and a bigger fruit character than the white would. So I went with Munich, Care Munich, and Special B, with some wheat in there too. Just to bring it up a little bit.
And so you did a fermentation in each of these with the beers on their own, and we'll just go through the process.
Like we were talking about before, the process is almost unnecessarily complicated. I brewed 10 gallons of beer, and I split it. I will say 10 or 11 gallons of beer. Split it between two fermenters. One half got a mixed sour culture with, I would say, probably 2 or 3 strains of Brett, Lacto, and Petio. And then the other half just got wine yeast. So for the white side, I used Lalvin D47, and for the red side, I used the Lalvin RC212, just to be real accurate on that. But and then once they finish fermentation in a week's time, at least the majority of primary fermentation, then I blended them 50-50. And then after that, after they were done fermenting there, they got transferred into 3 different carboys, and one stayed, we'll say, plain with some more grape juice added. And the other 2 got different fruits. But those are beers that, like I said, I didn't send out to you guys, and I don't know that that's worth talking about those ones.
They are experiments.
Indeed.
So okay, so just so I can draw a chart in my head.
Mm-hmm.
An initial batch of beer was brewed, split into half. Half that was pitched with wine yeast, and half was your sour culture.
Yes.
And along with the wine yeast, you put white grape juice in the one.
Yes.
And then red grape juice in the other.
Yes.
And then you added an additional, after blending, you added an additional dose of the must, or the grape juice concentrate.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Like I said, it's a little bit, I don't know if it's unnecessarily, but it's definitely a little bit complex as far as the process goes.
Well, I think, what you came out with was complex, to coin a term, I guess. Talk about your where your house sour culture came from. How did you develop that?
Oh, that's again going back to not only myself experimenting, but just reading as much as I could on the internet, especially with the mad fermentationist. I mean, I can't speak highly enough about him, because he has a list on the site of all the different commercial beers that have viable cultures in them, and definitely made use of that. But all of them are mixes of commercial dregs.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So I don't think I've ever, I think I bought a packet of Rosalaire one time from Y Yeast, and I think I might have bought some Brett C once from White Labs. But other than that, these are all commercial cultures that were grown up. A combination of different dregs, beers I liked, beers I thought that I'd like to emulate their fermentation profile. So they went into a starter, or sometimes they just go right into the fermenter and kind of grow up from there. If I like it, it's something I'll perpetuate. If I don't like it as much, then we'll go with something different next time.
And you can get some sourness on a pretty short order.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I mean, the beers that have those mixed microbes in them, without any hops in there, I mean, they're sour within a couple days. So that's not really the thing that I'm waiting on. Getting it sour is not the big deal. It's trying to get that complexity there, get that breath to start kicking in a little bit. Especially these projects are kind of an exception, but we'll just say my basic sour beers, they don't have any Saccharomyces in them. So that Brett is really going to take a little bit of we'll say time and effort to develop some character. I don't want to over the top Brett character with these beers, and I want a complementary Brett character. And that's again going kind of back to the wine world, where that underlying Brettanomyces a lot of times establishes we'll just say like a terroir, if you would.
Mm-hmm. Now, I guess if there are sticklers out there, they're going to say that since you didn't put hops in the beverage, it's not technically a beer. But beers don't have all the other stuff that you did to it too. So, you might have to come up with a name all its own there, James, for your product, and start your own category, and then people can't knock it because it is what it is.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see if the BJCP is kind. I think it's difficult. The sour beer world and brewing sour beer, I think there's a lot of dichotomy there where, some people want to really hold on to what's been done traditionally, and other people, are doing things that sort of go against tradition. And this would definitely be something going against tradition, for the simple fact that, a lot of strains, not all strains, but a lot of strains of lactobacillus, which is, the major souring organism, they're very hop and alcohol sensitive. So too high IBUs, too high alcohol, and your lactobacillus isn't going to work at all for you. And, personally, I want my lacto to be a very strong component of my finished product.
Well, anything else about the process that you want to talk about before we head into the tasting?
No, I think that should cover it.
Okay, well, here we go. Back a couple of days to sitting on the patio with the wind chimes with Steve Wilkes. Steve Wilkes, we're sitting out with the wind chimes on the patio and the wind to go along with them. And welcome.
Oh, thanks, James.
We're trying something new for both of us, which is getting harder and harder to do as time goes on.
I know. This is so much better than that Vegemite stout that we had the other day.
I thought we weren't going to talk about that.
It was new.
Okay, this is these are wine/sour beer hybrids. And we approach this kind of, whenever you try something absolutely new, your brain doesn't have a vocabulary for it. So it's just like, what is it? What is this thing? And it took us a little while to kind of warm up to it. But I think that we are, as we taste these and as time goes on, I know I am getting more and more familiar with the concept, and I'm liking it more and more. What do you think? Let's start with the white first of all.
The white is easy to see through. It's much easier to see through than the red. I'm like you. I mean, they are so different than anything I've ever had before. It's a very interesting concept. So let me just rephrase that it's beer made with grape juice or wine made with beer, kind of.
Right.
And so when you drink it, and they're soured, and so the white has a really nice tartness to it, and I get a little white wine, thing going on. Now it's not like an oak aged, Chardonnay that's been blended with something, but you get a nice crisp white wine feel, mm-hmm. and you get a little of that funky sour Belgian-y kind of thing at the same time. And I was surprisingly, I liked it more than I thought I would. So that's kind of what I have to say about it.
It's to be more specific, I guess. Yeah. The aroma is more funky than the red, mm-hmm. And it's got kind of I guess you'd say kind of a horse blanket or kind of a barnyardy kind of smell to it.
Yeah.
That's the dog.
The dog agrees.
And it smells a little sour. And then when you taste it, it's got a nice tartness.
It really does. It's kind of I almost want to drink this with food rather than by itself. I almost kind of want to have some, I don't know, like a big old hot dog or something to go with it. I mean, it's got that tart kind of. It's good.
Yeah, and it to me it's more winey than it is beery.
Yeah, so are my children.
But it's good. I think. It's fairly clear. I mean, I guess you would say that it is clear. It's only slightly, only partly cloudy.
And there's no hops that I can tell, and so yeah, I think it's more like a wine than a beer, for sure.
But the more I drink of it, the more I like it. I think it's not very grapey, but you're more of a wine guy than I am. That may be an indication of some white wines where they're not as grapey as red wines. Maybe.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not as grapey, say, as Ripple, which is the standard for me. But no,
Mad Dog 2020.
Mad Dog. Well, that's the standard for red. It's just so darn unique. I mean, it's like it's not wine, it's not beer, it's its own thing. And I'm with you. I like it more than I think I'm want to. I mean, it's just really pretty darn good. He's on to something here.
Yeah.
Or she is. I don't know who made it. I don't have any idea.
It's James. James Sites.
Okay.
Assuming that's like as I am a one of the male persuasion. Now the red does not smell as funky as the white. There is a tartness to it.
Yep.
And it's much more grapey. It's much more fruity than the white.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it tastes a lot, or it's a cousin of some sort to the New Glarus Raspberry Tart. It has that same kind of fruitiness, a little tartness, a little effervescence. It doesn't have that big malt backbone that the New Glarus beer does, but it's a cousin. It's in the same family.
It's like the pie filling without the crust.
Yeah. And no tapioca.
No, but I've compared the New Glarus fruit beers to fruit pies. Because you get the fruitiness of the filling, and then you get the malt backbone forms the crust. The sort of breadiness, the crust of the pie.
Yeah.
So there's a balance there. I think that if there's any complaint that I would have, is that I think that I would tip the scale more toward the malt side of things to kind of bring out some bready characters, to maybe get some sort of a pastry configuration in the taste profile. And there's the air conditioner.
Well, in the red for sure, yeah. Maybe not in the white so much. It's a really interesting concept and a fun thing to play with, and I wouldn't mind even trying this a little bit to see what could happen.
Yeah, it wouldn't be difficult to mix in some must, from the homebrew store, and with some wort. So yeah, these are tasty, very tasty. I was reluctant at first because it's something new, and just the concept to me sounds intimidating,
Neither fish nor fowl.
Yeah. maybe we're messing with it. Can more air conditioners come on?
I don't think, and it's only like 60 degrees.
Well, we're hanging meat inside.
Oh,
so.
okay.
What if we blend it?
Oh my.
A little bit of blend. We're crossing the streams.
What are you at Hogwarts now?
Oh.
Is it good?
Well,
Yeah.
not bad. It adds more tartness to the red.
Oh, well, that's pretty good.
So the verdict is that I think that this is an interesting direction to take. I think that combining beer and wine and sourness, I think it's valid. I think that there's some drinkable stuff that you could get, and it'd be interesting to build upon this and to tinker with the recipe and kind of see what comes next.
Well, I think he used a wine yeast. Is that right? I'm pretty sure. And
a house sour yeast.
And a house sour. And so I'm wondering about maybe a beer yeast that would leave a little more body in it, because the wine yeast, I presume, would dry it out more, would take it out pretty far in terms of conversion. So I think there's a lot of things that you could do with this that might be kind of fun. And, it's pretty darn good. They're both, and they're really pretty in the glass. It looks nice, and it pours well, and I think it would be good with Emil. I really do.
And I'm sure Emil would enjoy that.
Emil would. Indeed.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, James.
So that was fun. I got to tell you that, whenever somebody sends me something that's a little unusual, I'm a little hesitant. I'm like, is this really going to work? And this was no exception, certainly, because it's something we'd never done before. But we were surprised. It was a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of stuff that we liked about it, and I think that in the show with on experimental home brewing with the Denicon and Drew Beecham, Drew was talking about putting grape must into a saison. So that sparked my imagination back then, and now tasting this as well. I know somebody who owns a homebrew shop locally, and he might have a wine kit or two in the back of the shop that may be on discount or something, and so this at least got Steve and my gears turning as far as, again, what we liked about these hybrids and how we could work them into a project in the future. Were you surprised at anything we said, or the direction of our comments?
I thought it was fantastic. I mean, you guys have tried some. We'll just say some different things. I remember you doing the Acerglyn, the maple syrup. I don't know if you call it beer, but like the maple syrup mead a while back. And that was definitely interesting. I would have liked to have been there and tried that. But no, I'm definitely not surprised at all. I think, your comments were certainly, appropriate and very spot on. It certainly is something different. And if anything that I got out of the whole experience was that it taught me what to expect from these ingredients, not only the wine and the, how it interacted with the sour beer, but also, when you throw in sort of a different aspect there with the wine yeast, then, there's a lot of different things going on, we'll say.
And these were two different animals. I mean, I guess you would expect that
absolutely
with the white and red, but there were different complexities. There were different layers of complexity in each, and the character of the grapes and maybe the wine yeast as well in each of them brought out different characteristics. And they, it was, like I say, I really enjoyed it. I thought that at least it's a good start.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think it's a good foundation, for not only future experimentation, but also, like I said, using those constituent ingredients again, and seeing how they kind of interplay off each other. Now that I'm thinking about experiment that I would love to do, I don't know that I would really. I don't want to say waste the time on it, but spend the amount of time on it that I would, but is to switch the wine yeasts and, put the red wine yeast in with the white wine or the white must. And the same thing with the white wine yeast in with the red, and see how much of an overall flavor component might change from it. I don't know how much it would, but, I think you'd certainly be able to tell the difference to some extent.
Yeah, that'd be fun. You could split a batch further.
Yeah, exactly.
But and as I'm thinking about it here, and I'm thinking about how hops or how bitterness would enter into that equation. I think you might be onto something there of leaving the hops out of that, at least in that particular or those particular recipes that you sent, because I don't know that bitterness would have been complementary with that.
I definitely think that that's something that those two profiles are definitely at odds. When you have sourness and bitterness, that's a little bit, difficult to integrate properly. But, when you look at not only some of the newer sour beers out there, but, beers like Cantillon Iris, they're dry hopped. You still get you get perceived bitterness from that, certainly, no matter what, species of hop you use. And that's another interesting component to it too. When you add the hops, so you really, if you're adding them in the beginning and you're getting a certain amount of IBUs, it's definitely going to limit your initial sourness. I mean, the sourness might appear over time, but it's certainly going to take a lot longer just because, those fast acting microbes are inhibited.
I bet you if you threw some oak cubes or some oak spirals in there with these, that might, especially the red, that might be complementary as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think that turned out in such a fashion that some oak character would certainly benefit it. I think that the white hybrid, I guess we'll call it, was definitely more like a sparkling Riesling. It was definitely on the more kind of sort of lighter, fruity, more acidic side of things, where the red varietal was a lot more fruity in nature, and it could have used some tannin in it from that oak.
But and then I tasted the white first, and then the red second, and then afterwards, I let my wife is not a huge sour beer fan, so I let her taste the red because I didn't think it was as sour as the white, and she tasted it and she said, "Ooh, sour beer," or "Ooh, sour." So apparently, my tongue is as desensitized about sourness now as it is about heat from spicy food. So I'm not the best judge anymore. But as I said, this is a whole lot of fun. I'd be interested to see where you take this next. But you got some things in the works, or you're strategizing things on the professional side now too, huh?
It's so probably about, I would say, a year ago. Well, maybe let me take a step back even further. So like a lot of maybe obsessed home brewers, I named my brewery. This is, probably maybe 7, 8 years ago or so. And about a year and a half ago, I thought, well, why should I just stay a pretend brewery? Why don't I try to do something more so on the commercial side without really investing the time, money, and effort to open an actual brewery? So what I wanted to do was approach these local breweries here in the greater Pittsburgh area and see if they were interested in doing, a sour beer project. Sort of kind of like what Perennial and Side Project are doing without me actually being, the head brewer there. So a year ago, or approximately thereabouts, I created a Facebook page under the name Stelmacher Brewing Company, and started it up and sent out a lot of proposals as far as doing something on the sour beer side. Got some response, but not a lot initially. And then probably about maybe 4 or 5 months ago, got some really, really solid interest from one brewing company who asked me to have them remain anonymous, until things get more, we'll say, set in stone. But we're probably about 2 weeks away from signing some contracts and really getting this barrel-aged sour beer project going here in Pittsburgh.
Oh, that's exciting.
It definitely is. I mean, there are some people that have been doing maybe some one-offs, some Brett beers, some sour beers, but to have we'll say full-blown sour beer project, I think will be fantastic for not only the brewery in particular, but for the area. I mean, there's very beer savvy people here in Pittsburgh, but up until recently just haven't had a lot of locally made excellent product, and I hope to be one of those people putting that out there for them.
Well, I wish you luck. I keep us posted on your progress, and if you come up with some fun things on the commercial side that you want to share too, we're open for that as well.
I'm definitely happy to send out beer.
We're happy to drink it.
Right on.
Well, James, this has been fun. I appreciate your sharing this experiment with us, and you've inspired at least Steve and me to play a little bit more on the grapey side of things, and I hope that you've inspired those out there as well.
So do I. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks again to James. If you want to check on the progress of James's commercial endeavors, head over to Facebook and search for Stellmacher Brewing Company, Stlmacher. And we wish him good luck on that. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com, and please don't forget to tell us where you're from. You'll find our bottle openers on our shop. Our Basic Brewing growler bags are also available. Protect your precious homebrew and craft beers. You take it from place to place. Check out our support link, where you can throw a couple of bucks into the tip jar by subscribing financially to our podcasts. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stemming into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. We've got combo deals to save you a few bucks if you want to buy more than one DVD at a time, with a free bottle opener included with any of our DVD combos for a limited time. And we've got shirts in the store as well. Our Basic Brewing Brewers Logbooks are in the store as well. Keep track of up to 50 batches of beer. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order them online in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Steampunk Bag of Gears Standard and Oregon Fruit Gooseberries in Light Syrup. Thanks again, everybody. Remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget you can also join the American Homebrewers Association and subscribe to BYO Magazine through the associate link on basicbrewing.com. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.